Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Been a while, huh? It's probably been 2 years since I've uploaded anything on this channel. Against the Green with Rashawn here, and I thought, well, they changed the food pyramid. Might as well make a short video about it or whatever, you know? Now, I'm glad that they did this. I've actually been a pretty, I don't want to say big fan, but I've been a fan of RFK for the past couple of years for him going and talking about how food is very important for Americans' well-being. So we've got a crisis of dishealth, depression, and, you know, just obesity and all of that. And I understand he sounds like he's got a frog in his throat for perpetuity. I understand that there's this, you know, vaccine thing or whatever, which honestly, I think people should have a lot more nuance about that. You know, people I think are quite bad when it comes to multifaceted thinking. It's either, oh, vaccines are all good or they're all bad. There's never an in-between. And if you try to invoke an in-between, then you're, you know, anti-vaxxer or some nonsense. But, you know, that's for a different video, I suppose. But anyway, on the screen right now, we have the old food pyramid. And to be honest with you, I think the only glaring issue I've ever had with the food pyramid is the fact that we have 6 to 11 servings of starch, you know, of which a lot of these sources for Americans, I know it's kind of different for other countries, that have caused bloating and stomach distress for a very long time, and yet people still continue to eat this because they don't realize that when they ingest this stuff, it turns knots in their stomach. And to be honest with you, if the food pyramid just eliminated this bottom portion, to be honest, the rest isn't that terrible, right? As someone who still does carnivore, I've done carnivore for about 2 years officially. I've done keto, I've been in the low carb space for about 3.5 years. Right now, I switch between, or I shift between strict carnivore and ketovore. So there are times where I have a little bit of sugar, not from a source that's traditionally healthy, but I make sure that there's no seed oils or anything in that nonsense, you know. But again, you remove this bottom part, there really isn't a huge problem, you know. Vegetables, the only vegetable that I really eat is sauerkraut. That's really it. Every other vegetable to me is either useless or a net negative because of the anti-nutrients in some of these. Fruit, again, I don't really mess with sugar, and when I do, it's from mostly a snack source. I'd add or multiply this by ×3, have 6 to 9 servings, whatever that means, of meat and poultry. And I don't really drink milk. I don't mess with yogurt, don't mess with cheese, really. Unless the milk is raw. A couple of years ago, I made a video about raw milk and how people should stop fear-mongering that, especially if you get milk from a wholesome source, like a farmer that you would trust, right? We'll probably get into raw milk again at some point. But what's funny, really, is up here, it says use sweets sparingly, which I never really understood, because when you talk about sweets, sure, you're talking about sugar. But when you're talking about all this nonsense down here, all that is mostly, or all, starch, right? And sugar is just glucose, or excuse me, glucose and fructose. And starch is just glucose, you know. And I don't really care about this GI, whatever it is, the what is that thing called, that, you know, how quickly carbs are absorbed or whatever, you know, the GI number or whatever that thing is called. Who cares? Because it all gets absorbed anyway, right? The only difference between these two is if you're having more sugar, then I guess you're not having as much fructose load, obviously. But a lot of these starches can be more, or tougher rather, on their digestive tract to deal with. So if I had to pick one of the two, I would say sugar is a bit better, to be honest with you, but I digress. But either way, the administration's done a good job with this, to be honest with you. The number one concern here, as I said, was get the whole grains relegated. All right, get that at the bottom. Gluten and all that, but even more than gluten, just a lot of things in whole grains promote issues in the gut. And you don't need a study to know that. If I were to ever stop eating carnivore or ketovore or meat heavy, one thing that I would never reincorporate is whole grains. It's just useless, to be honest with you. Now obviously it's not perfect, and I have bias because, again, I mostly eat meat. But in order for this to be taken seriously by the mainstream, you've got to focus on what's useful. And here, right, it's been focusing on protein, and here focusing on fruits and vegetables, which everyone talks about, So, sure, if you split between these two, then you'll be fine. Or for the most part, you'll be fine. You'll probably be better with, hormone signaling, ghrelin, leptin, and all that. There's a lot more sugar on this side, but still, this is 100 times better than what most people are eating on a daily basis in America. If it was me, I'd add more emphasis on this part of the pyramid. Have this trickle down into some of this, nuts and seeds. Okay, that's fine, but, you don't really need any of those. But again, this is a bit more palatable, because I'm pretty sure RFK and those guys know that meat should probably be a bit more dominant on this pyramid. But when it comes to having it be mainstream, you can't be serious, or less people would take this seriously if all this was just plastered with meat. So listen, this is a good thing. If I'm being real about this, I'd rather be a bit more selfish about this and not tell everyone, because I'd like to keep the meat for myself. I want to keep the beef and all this stuff right here for myself and have everyone else eat the glop. But to be honest with you can't have a successful country when everyone is out here eating nonsense, and you are what you eat. So if what you eat makes you be depressed or whatever, which I do believe in that, then that's not really the world that we really want to be around. So this is a step in the right direction. No matter whether or not you like Trump or you like the administration or whatever the hell it is, RFK is doing some good shit. RFK is doing some good stuff right here. You've got to ignore some of the other stuff about him and be like, this is good. This might make a difference. Hopefully. It'll be more expensive if you get this into schools or whatever, which I don't really think it's going to go that far if we're being honest, but it's a step in the right direction. So there it is, the evaluation of the new food pyramid. Hopefully this won't be the only video that we do and go back out or be out for 2 more years. This has been Rashawn, against the grain, literally.